All right. Hello, everybody. Suzanne Hacker here again. We are having another session for the Welcoming All Inclusive Hosting Virtual Summit. And we have really this topic is on authenticity, especially in your social media and your listing. And I have an expert here that I met at another conference, and I really wanted her to jump into our summit here and really to share with you her heart on social media and content and that kind of thing. So there was something that really struck me about her presentation and the authenticity, first of all, that Kate has, and then also in her presentation. So, Kate, I'm going to let you take it away here, and I'll probably jump in with questions from myself and others as we go through this. So, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
So, today we are doing what I like to call social media group therapy. Because I work with, real quick about me. So, my name's Kate Gilbert. I have a background in graphic design and teaching. I actually started my first business at 15 in my parents' garage. And in 2008, I founded an online magazine that I ran for 10 years. And then since then, I feel like I found my true calling, which is helping entrepreneurs and small business owners get more done, especially in terms of like messaging, social media, marketing, and like planning and that kind of stuff. So I talk about this a lot. And when I was starting a program about social media, and I realized the main problem we have, most of us, is we have a lot of feelings about social media. Everybody says to me, it makes me feel bad. So we're going to talk about that real quick. Or a lot rather. So, one of the main things that people tell me is they feel like other people are doing better than them. You know, they look at other people's feeds and everything looks perfect. You know, their houses look perfect, their families look perfect, their vacations look perfect. And they're like, that's not what my life is like. But for whatever reason, they believe it when they see other people showing it. So, the main rule, this is like my number one rule with social media right now, and it's served me really well, is I close an app the minute I get that icky feeling. Even if I'm not sure what it is, if I'm scrolling and I get that icky feeling, then I shut it down. And you can also think like, what is this icky feeling? Is this like jealousy? Is this, nobody wants to admit that they're jealous, but sometimes if we look at it, we think like it actually is, or it's like believing what other people are showing. So we also have to keep in mind, we should not be believing everything we see, right? So this lovely lady right here does not actually look like that lady right here. And this person here was I found this TikTok, and this woman was showing, this is what people see behind me when I'm in a Zoom meeting. But if we look, this is what this lady actually looks like without a filter. And this is what is next to her bed. It's a pile of junk and clothes and whatever. So we have to keep in mind that we're constantly being bombarded with these, somewhat false images of what's really going on. So I want to ask you, how can you be trustworthy in a world of fibbers and filters? Okay. So I think this is especially important for, in this world that you all are talking about. I live in a city, the apartments are quite small. I go looking online for an apartment, and which is much like if I go online looking for a vacation place to stay. And they've shot it with a lens that makes everything look huge, but in fact you get there and it's tiny. So like, how can you show authenticity, and how can you show truthfulness in what you're showing to people? And I think one of the main ways that you all can think about that is like doing like video walkthroughs. It's a lot harder to fib about what's going on when you're actually doing like a walkthrough than it is when you have like a perfectly placed photo and you can't see what's happening over here, or like a a lens with a lot of distortion on it, for example.
Yeah.
So the other thing I say is, and I talk about this all the time, I have a teenager, so I talk about this all the time with her. I pay a lot of attention to who I'm following online, and you should do the same thing. I try to follow people who inspire me. I try to follow people who give me good ideas that I can say, okay, that's an interesting idea. How can I try that for myself, for my own social media? I don't copy people, but people give inspiration, and I say, how would I do that my own way?
Yeah.
And I also try to think about who is my target market following, like who is my audience following. So I try to look at who my audience is following so I have a good sense at what they're looking at. But if there's somebody who I see on a regular basis who's not making me feel so great, I stop following them, or I hide them, or I block them if I have to.
Yeah.
So the other thing that people say to me a lot is, I'm not getting the results I want. I post and I get like a couple likes, and one of them is my aunt. And I'm not getting a lot of engagement on my posts. And the thing we have to think about is, there are things we can control and we have to take responsibility for, but there's also like the entire algorithm out there, and we don't exactly know what the algorithm is, or actually the reality is there's multiple algorithms, there's not even just one. We can't see inside of it. It's a black box. So all we can do is control the things we can control, and let go of the stuff that we're not in charge of. So Suzanne, do you ever play like phone games or anything?
Actually, I don't.
Oh,
Like I don't
okay.
play Candy Crush or any of those. It's so funny. I
Oh,
was just,
well,
I was flying recently and I
have
was
you played
watching other people.
solitaire in real life?
I used to play solitaire like all the time, but it's like I don't know if it's just I love what I'm doing so much that I feel like, you know what, I'm just, there's so much, with my business or with
Yeah,
helping other people with their vacation rentals or co-hosting and
yeah,
coaching and stuff, that it's like, that's my life. And, some of it, I think of as fun, and creating social media posts. To me, that's fun. That's my,
yeah.
like
Well,
bit
you
of
were lucky that
downtime.
you look at it that way, because I know a lot of people don't look at it that way. But um, like if you've ever played even solitaire with a deck of cards or whatever, if you lost a game of solitaire, would
Yeah.
you be like, oh my gosh, I'm just the worst? Oh,
Right.
like, would you actually blame yourself? No, it's
Right.
just sort of chance. You've
Yeah.
made decisions, but there's also a lot of chance involved.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. So I like to tell people about what I
Right.
call Candy Crush rule.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Candy Crush rule, like if you played a game of Candy Crush and you lost, would you decide that it was all your fault and that you're terrible and that you're bad at everything and you're not smart or whatever? Of course not. Of course not. That's a ridiculous idea. But we have to keep in mind, games on telephones are run by algorithms too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just like social media, sometimes they make it easy for you to win, sometimes they make it impossible for you to win without paying to win.
Yeah.
And it's just like that on social media too. So we have to separate everything into what we can control and what we cannot. And the things we can control are the messages we're putting out there, the quality of our content, how authentic we are, and when we post, right? We cannot actually control what the algorithm does. We cannot control what people do as much as we would like to. We cannot control if people click like or don't, or if they comment or don't. We cannot control if there's breaking news that day and something huge happens, and what you post, nobody sees it because everybody's talking about Kate Middleton or whatever, you
Yeah.
know? So, and we can't control what a platform does and how it changes. Okay. So I like to give this example. This woman, her name is Ari. This is a real story. She was an influencer, And so she had 2.6 million followers. Okay, that's a lot of followers. And I'm very happy for anybody who happens to have that many. I do not. So she wanted to start a clothing line, and she needed to sell 36 t-shirts in order to place her order. Okay. So with 2.6 million followers, 36 t-shirts, that's like one out of, if I don't remember the math exactly, but it's like, so many people. I think I could sell 36 t-shirts,
Yep.
So how many t-shirts do you think she sold? I want you all to do a little guess. She could not sell 36 t-shirts. Okay. So we have to keep in mind that well, first of all, she wasn't selling really apparently what her followers wanted, and the offer didn't align with what she had been showing on her feed, so it didn't work out. But we have to keep in mind that vanity metrics do not actually equal sales. So we have to think about this in terms of our own results. And we can also think about this in terms of when we're looking at other people and saying, wow, they have so many followers and they have like all these likes on every single post. Well, guess what? They might not be able to book anybody in their
Yeah.
Airbnb, or,
Yeah.
they might not be booked up even if they have a bunch of people following them. You don't really know what's going on there. And you also can't take your own results to mean that, like, mean more than it does. Like, vanity metrics are your likes, how many people follow you. Yeah, it's great to have people following you. It feels nice to have likes and have a lot of comments on your posts and things like that. But the reality is it doesn't equal sales. And it also does not define your value as a person, and it does not define the potential success of your business. In a past life, I used to sell cakes. I had like 1,000 followers, I think, and I could sell, at Christmas time when I was selling a particular kind of cake, I could sell 36 cakes, and I, did not have 2.6 million followers. So I
Yeah.
was really much more successful than
Yeah.
Ari was, right?
Yeah.
But nobody would believe it looking at our numbers. So the best way to teach the algorithm to value your content is to create high quality content that engages with people. Okay. And when I say high quality, I don't necessarily mean that it's fancy. I mean that it contains value, that it contains something interesting, that it's something that people want to watch. I'm not talking about buying a multi-$1,000 camera or anything. Like, I do everything on my phone. So
Yeah.
the other thing I hear people say a lot, they get very shy about even showing up online at all. They say they're embarrassed. They say they feel judged. They're worried people are going to judge them. They say they maybe even don't feel safe. So what I love about what Suzanne does is that you have such a purpose. You have such a mission behind what you're doing. And I think if you are coming at your social media and speaking about what you do and why from a place of passion and purpose, where you're very clear about why you're doing what you do, then you're going to feel a lot more self-confident, and it's really easy to show up. It's a lot easier, at least, to show up. So the other thing I like to talk about, and this is a little silly, but it's okay, we're going to do it anyways. We're going to talk about the junior high lunchroom rule. Okay. And I'm going to show you an embarrassing picture of myself. So the junior high lunchroom rule. All right, here's 13-year-old Katie Gilbert. Okay. And I was at my National Junior Honor Society induction ceremony. And what was going through my head? It was like, are my bangs okay? Because I was growing them out. Is my dress cool enough? Like, is Becky looking at me? Like, do I fit in? And the thing is that these are all kind of the same things we're saying to ourselves online all the time when we start to feel self-conscious or worried online. So, like, what would you tell 13-year-old you, or what have you told your teenagers, or what would you tell 13-year-old Katie? And the reality is nobody's thinking about you that much, and I know that sounds harsh, but the fact is that nobody is worrying about you or judging you as harshly as you are judging yourself. Everybody's really worried about themselves. Even if we're giving, loving people, everybody is doing this. So don't be your own bully. Okay. The I I have to remember, like, there are actually people out there rooting for me.
Yeah.
Even if I don't get a ton of likes on posts, I can't tell you how many times, if you said to me, hey Kate, like if you said to me last week, hey Kate, somebody's going to call you this week and tell you they need your help, it's somebody and that they want to book time with you, who would it be? And if I gave you a top 5, the person who actually did that would not have been on the list. You just don't know who's out there watching and maybe not interacting. Okay. So don't be your own bully. Show up, and think about also you showing up as your authentic self gives other people permission to be themselves as well. And I mean, especially those among us who are like middle-aged ladies, I've had so many, I mean, I work mostly with women, and I've had a lot of
Yeah.
women like say to me, oh, well, I don't look like I used to. I'm embarrassed about my gray hair and my wrinkles and whatever. And I say, okay, show up anyway, because I want to see you, and people like me want to see you, and we want to feel good about showing up too. So
Yeah.
so authenticity matters is a thing I talk about a lot. Um, so do you remember when Instagram started and it was like beautiful pictures? It was just like everybody had like perfect pictures, right? It's starting to change a little bit,
Yeah.
right? Now we have videos on Instagram, we have stories where people are a lot more real.
Yeah.
If you're on TikTok, if it doesn't end up getting banned in the US, TikTok is really like evidence that people are sick of perfect. Okay. Actually, if you're on TikTok and you produce overly produced content, people don't like it. It doesn't do well. People want people to show up, talk to the camera, be really honest. So we see that all the time. And I hear it even from people who are not on TikTok. They are tired of the perfect meals, perfect family, perfect. They want more honesty, they want connection, and people really want connection and community right now. They want to see authenticity and believe other people because they're being honest, and they want to connect. We want to bring the social back to social media, right? That was originally, it was meant to be social, right?
Yeah.
So I think if you can show up as yourself, which means, like if there's some fad going on, some trend going on about like dancing, remember when everybody was like doing the dancing and pointing thing? Never like, I will completely humiliate myself that way in front of friends or even like in a small group setting, but I will not show up online and dance and point. It's just not my thing. So don't do it. Don't follow a trend that doesn't feel right to you, because everybody will be able to tell. You need to be yourself and show up in a way that feels good to you. So, do you want to talk about any more emotional stuff before I talk about some practical stuff?
No, this has been fabulous. Love the don't dance if you don't want to dance. Like that is like totally my thing. Like I am not I'm not gonna get in dance in TikTok or Instagram or anything like that. But I think what's so hard is it goes back to how you started, as far as, be yourself. And I love what you said about, don't bully yourself for Pete's
Yes.
sake. Because
Yes.
we do, I mean, we all do that. We all do. We have that little voice in our head I'm going to admit it. I got that voice in my head that, is always like, no, nobody wants to see that. Or, nobody wants to hear you say that. You're not important enough. Or, whatever that voice is telling you, just tell it to shut the blank up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know what? The nice thing about you're not important enough in a way
Yeah,
is actually there are kind of two sides to that, like one side is okay, if I'm not that important, I can show up and do whatever I want. You know what I mean? It can be kind of freeing if you look at it
sure,
that way.
sure.
So, but the next time you have that little voice in your head, try to talk to the junior high Suzanne who's walking into the lunchroom with her tray, trying to figure out where she's going to sit down, and
Yeah,
think about what you would tell yourself. You do have friends, you do have people who are rooting for you, you do have people who want to see what you have to say, who want to listen to you. So you just have to
yeah,
find the right table.
yeah. I love it. Find the right table, folks. All right.
Okay. So just because time management is such an issue on social media, I do want to give you all some very practical tips
Yeah.
for ways that you can manage it. I don't know if anybody else is in the ADHD club with me, but
Probably a
I
lot of us.
I immediately, like, I go in my phone to do a thing and I immediately forget what I was doing. If there's a red badge on an app, I can't not click on it. It's like I do it without meaning to.
Sure,
It's
sure.
awful. So this is like the lowest tech solution that I use. I literally write on a post-it note what I'm going to do. I stick it to the top of my phone and I go in and I do it. And then I close it down. Okay. So I just don't get sucked in, because that little post-it sitting there is enough of a pattern interrupt for me that I
Sure.
don't start scrolling. There are also, like, if you're doing things on your computer, there are lots of extensions you can use. There's this one I like. It's called Newsfeed Eradicator. So when I open Facebook, I actually don't have a news feed at all. Um, I have this on all the time. I'm able to turn it off if I want to scroll Facebook, but it allows me to open Facebook, go directly to where I need to go to post for myself, to interact with people who've messaged me, things like that. And there are similar applications that you can use on your telephone that, like, there's one called Opal. There's another one called One Sec, which, like, apparently if you have a thing that you open all the time without thinking about it, it pauses the open for 1 second. And
Huh,
apparently that's enough time for you to be like, wait, why am I doing this? And
huh.
just leave it. So there are lots of apps, so you can look into those. The other thing you can do is you can separate out your accounts for, like, work purposes and personal purposes. Um, I have a work account that I use for posting for my business, for engaging with my audience, for gathering ideas that relate to that stuff. I also have a personal account where I stay in touch with my friends, I post personal things, and I scroll, like, aimlessly. Or you can actually use, like, in some cases, some people use different platforms for work and enjoyment. Like, for me, TikTok is my fun app. I don't use it for work right now.
Sure.
Um, or if you happen to have multiple devices, if you have an old device, like an old phone or something, you could always choose that phone is your work phone, for example, where your work accounts were, and then you wouldn't be looking at it all the time.
Sure.
I also set limitations on my apps. This is built into iPhones now. I'm sure there's an Android equivalent where I have a limitation on how long I can be in certain apps each day. So it just keeps me from falling down the black hole. And I also use scheduled summaries, because even though a lot of my work is based around social media, I cannot function if my phone is binging at me all day long. I don't
Sure.
even get email notifications anymore because I can't.
Yeah.
I can't concentrate. I can't be in a meeting and then getting like ding, ding. I can't do it. So I use scheduled summaries, which is a iPhone setup. I'm sure
Okay.
there's something similar in Androids as well, where I have a summary of certain applications are only in my scheduled summary, and they come in at 8 a.m., noon, 4 p.m., and 8 p.m. for me. And I don't look at work things on my telephone after 8 p.m. because this is a hard lesson I had to learn when I was running my magazine. Because, like the one night you look at something, you're going to catch somebody who like gave you a bad review or said something that really hurt your feelings or whatever, and then you don't sleep. So
Yeah.
I just don't look at my work stuff after that time. So, and the other thing you can do is you can designate a certain part of your day or your week to working on your social media. A lot of us need to designate more work time to it and less aimless scrolling time. A lot of people I work with, they completely admit that if they just stop scrolling and if they spent those 45 minutes actually creating a few posts, they could create several posts in that period of time,
Yeah.
and they would have had their posting done for 2 weeks, and instead they're just kind of scrolling. So a lot of people I know set aside a certain amount of time each day, each week for that kind of stuff. And since I have scheduled summaries on my phone, any messages that come in, any comments that come in, I'm interacting with those during my scheduled times. So I'm not running to my telephone anytime somebody leaves a comment. So
Yeah.
the main way we can do better on social media and feel better about it is having like an overall attitude shift about what we're doing and what our goals are. And if we can show up, keeping in mind that each post is an experiment, okay? If
Yeah.
you can think about it like a scientist and say, oh, that post didn't do so great. I wonder why that is. That's so interesting. Instead of saying, oh, that post didn't do so well. What am I going to do? Nobody likes me. You know, like if we can take away the drama and we can come at it and form a hypothesis and then test a solution, change one thing, test a solution, and keep going, then you take the emotion out of it. So it doesn't feel so draining all the time. It doesn't feel so stressful all the time. And you also are potentially constantly improving because, if we're thinking about it like a scientist, we're improving the experiment rather than stressing out. And we can also look at it as a game, but only compete against yourself. But
Sure.
each of us has to decide what makes it fun for you. Like Suzanne, you said you love creating content. That's fantastic. That's so lucky that you feel that way. Some people like the writing, some people like the photography, I love video editing, actually, as strange as that sounds. So you have to figure out what makes it fun for you and lean into that and see what you can make happen there. And if anybody is interested, I have a freebie. It's really juicy. It's called the Content Creation Roadmap. And what it gives you is like step-by-step ways of making content creation so much easier and doing it really efficiently. There's a shot checklist in there that I help you develop. So when you're taking pictures or taking new videos, that you can take a lot all at once and you can think about all the different ways you can use those so you can make as many pieces of content as possible out of one thing and make sure that every single asset that you create is the best it can possibly be and become as many things as possible.
Love it. Thank you for giving us that freebie and that download that people can go and get. And that's, they just go to www.kategilbert.com and
Yep.
they can get that fabulous freebie. Kate, thank you so much for sharing, your heart, talking about that authenticity. that, really resonated with me in the very beginning when I first, heard you speak, that I really wanted to make sure that people heard, just because we do so often, we're our own worst enemy when it comes to content and social media and, sharing, like our vacation rentals with the world,
Mhm.
and these are important places that people want to go and they want to enjoy.
Yep.
So share them with people, and share, yourself, tell people your story behind your vacation rental, tell people about your vacation rental and all the fabulous things about it. And then also don't forget to share about, the local area and things that
Yeah.
people can enjoy that, not only do you enjoy, but others might as well. So,
Right. And I think also especially important with, a lot of what you're talking about is if you show, you don't just say it's wheelchair accessible. If you can show that a person in a wheelchair getting inside, you show that it's actually like truly accessible, because I know people who've definitely been burnt before
yeah,
going someplace and expecting one thing and finding something else. So, between two places, one that's showing me very clearly who they are, what they believe, and how it's going to function for me and my family who have special needs,
yeah,
versus somebody else who just says, yeah, it's this. Like, which one am I going to choose?
right. Yeah.
Obviously. Yeah.
Well, and even if your place isn't wheelchair accessible, because a lot of places aren't. Okay,
Oh,
well,
no,
let's
sure.
show
I
what
mean,
it
that was
is
just an
accessible
example.
for. No, I
Yeah.
know, I know. I'm just making sure people realize like it's
Yeah.
okay, because it may still be accessible for somebody with a walker or,
Sure.
with a cane, or let's say they're blind, or, those types of things. Okay, well, just show what it is, because you'd
Yeah.
rather they knew ahead of time what it's like than to get there and be disappointed and or it not be a place that they can actually stay in,
Right.
just
And
because
show the
it's not going
safety
to work.
features for, like the pool is not accessible unless, your children will not be able to get into the pool without you doing these things, or the doors lock this way,
Yeah.
or things like that. It's really important for people to, feel safe and know that their family is going to be safe. Yeah.
Yeah. But you're so right. Just be you, people, and
Yeah.
just show the reality of it. The reality is good,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us and sharing that. And I'll make sure people head on over to www.kategilbert.com and get that free download. And thank you so much for joining us in our welcoming all inclusive hosting virtual summit, Kate.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.